Hi, I'm Jeff Lippman, and on behalf of SUNx Malta and our launch partners, WTTC and TOTA, Thompson Okanagan Tourism Association, I'm really happy to welcome you to this event today. We have about 1 hour, and it's going to be broken down into 3 components. First of all, we're going to show a short video which tries to explain what SUNx Malta is. It's a legacy program for Maurice Strong, who was basically the father of sustainable development and a climate activist half a century ago. And then we'll follow that with some messages from the launching organizations. And finally, we'll take the last half hour with questions and answers with a panel, which has Jeff Poole, who is the Senior Vice President of Advocacy at WTTC, and Glenn Manchuk, who's the CEO of Thompson Okanagan Tourism. We'll start the video with a focus on existential climate change, which is basically what SUNx Malta is all about.
It has become apparent that today man's own activities have reached the scale where they are the principal determinants of his own future. For example, we are now today effecting more changes in the composition of the atmosphere, in the composition of the waters of the world, and even the composition of certain elements in our food chain. We're making more of these changes in one generation that have been made in millions of years of human evolution. We don't know exactly what will be the ultimate impact of these changes, but we do know that many of them are irreversible and many of them could be decisive in their effects on man's future. The natural world in which man lives and on which he depends is indeed deteriorating, is being destroyed in many instances at a rate that is accelerating and that can only continue to accelerate unless we begin to control the activities that are having this destructive impact. From the beginning, however, we have been determined, because the fact that action in this field is absolutely indispensable to man's future, that governments at Stockholm would be given the maximum opportunity to take decisions which will lead to action. Now, equally, however, I believe that the nations of the world themselves are impressed with the evidence that we have amassed that suggests that we must adopt a much more cooperative attitude towards our dealing with this problem, that Stockholm must usher in a new era of international cooperation. And I believe that this will be the dominant motivation. I have to hope that.
This is not only going to change the course, the direction of our life on this planet, but it's going to change the way in which we consult with each other about the fundamental decisions that shape our direction on this planet. This is the first truly global conference in the sense that literally hundreds of millions of people are out there with us here.
It was not as much optimism as excitement and expectation and hope. Hope that this World Conference, which attracted more world leaders than had ever assembled before, would in fact be able to move us off the dime onto a pathway to a more sustainable future, to help make a fundamental change of course in industrial civilization.
Maurice was a friend and mentor to many of us. He was also a true leader and trailblazer for the environment. Indeed, Maurice's work gave birth to a brand new era of international environmental diplomacy and governance at the 1972 Stockholm Conference, which saw the birth of the United Nations Environment Programme. Maurice convened the first ever international expert group meeting on climate change, a clear demonstration of how he was way ahead of the curve. He shepherded in a range of vital global environmental governance processes from the original Rio Earth Summit, Agenda 21 and the Rio Declaration to the launch of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Convention on Biological Diversity. He was also a champion of nature-based solutions. He always saw the human species as part of the greater natural whole. He always identified the incredible capacity of nature to provide answers that even the most sophisticated technology and science still cannot match to this day. At the 2014 UN General Assembly, Maurice Strong called on world leaders to rise to their historic responsibility as custodians of the planet, and I quote, to take decisions that will unite rich and poor, north, south, east and west in a new global partnership to ensure our common future. It is also very welcome to see that leaders of the travel and tourism industry are getting behind the SUNx initiative and are committing to climate-friendly travel, helping us to meet our climate goals. This is a step that I believe Maurice Strong would have welcomed. Maurice will be forever remembered for placing the environment on top of the international agenda at the heart of development, with people and the planet being an integral part of that agenda. His courage, his entrepreneurship, his brilliance will continue to inspire me personally, and I know many generations to come. It is on his legacy that many of us are building today, with the hope that we can address the great challenges of the 21st century with the pioneering work that he was so much part of.
So there you have it. You have 50 years of commitment from Maurice Strong, and that's what we are trying to carry forward against the map that we've been given by the United Nations of the SDGs with the 2030 timeframe, and above all the Paris Climate Agreement with its 2050 timeframe. And I think the testimony from Achim Steiner, now the UNDP administrator and Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, clearly show just what a contribution and a vision Maurice Strong has had and has made to where we are now. If we have a chance of dealing with climate change, and I'm sure all of us in this event believe that we have to do something about it, it's because of the incredible foundations, the institutional foundations that Maurice has put in place. I'd now like to go to the second piece of this session and have some comments and messages from our partners and from our leader in SUNx Malta, the Minister of Tourism and Consumer Protection, Giulia Ferrugia Portelli.
It is with great pleasure that I want to announce here today the launch of the SUNx Malta Climate Friendly Travel Registry, linked to the UN Climate Action Portal. This is another important building block in Malta's commitment to support the travel and tourism sector in the battle against existential climate change. It places our nation in the forefront of transformation for this economically vital sector to become low-carbon SDG linked for 2030 and on the Paris 1.5-degree trajectory for 2050. And in that context, we are very pleased to welcome as launch partners the important World Travel and Tourism Council, WTTC, as an industry leader, and Thompson Okanagan Tourism as a destination leader. It is good that we share a common vision for a greener, cleaner future. This launch is also very much in line with the EU Green Deal and the recent call by the UN Secretary General for post-COVID-19 tourism to be climate friendly. I must say that proudly this extends Malta's tradition of being a global registry for shipping into the tourism sector, which is so important to our long-term sustainable development and that of the international community at large. I thank you.
The last 6 months have been a nightmare for all of us. COVID-19 has altered lives, economies, and the nature of business on every continent, from the largest cities to the smallest villages. Nobody knows this better than all of you. I recognize this has been a horrible year for your industry. Others have been impacted, but the tourism industry, which generated 10.4% of global gross domestic product, more than 8.8 trillion in 2018, has been among the sectors most impacted. UN Secretary General Guterres recognizes this, publicly warning that as many as 100 million direct tourism jobs are at risk, and the massive drop in export revenues from tourism could reduce global GDP by as much as 2.8%. He reminded us that tourism is an essential pillar of the Sustainable Development Goals and that the most vulnerable workers and nations are at risk. The climate change crisis did not disappear with the pandemic. It's like a hurricane slowly heading towards us, one we've been warned about for decades. For many, it has already reached their shores, both literally and figuratively. So here we are, caught in one of the biggest challenges to your industry since tourism really began in any modern sense. And we still face a climate emergency that must be dealt with. Unlike COVID-19, however, it's a threat we can clearly see coming. It is advertised daily. Let's heed the warning. The convergence of these two global crises has opened a window of opportunity, not simply to recover from a virus, but to build forward, to build cities and communities that are safe, healthy, green, and sustainable. This includes industries as well. The travel and tourism industry has an enormous role to play and can have, through its action, positive impacts. As the SG said, it is imperative that we rebuild the tourism sector in a safe, equitable, and climate-friendly manner, and so ensure tourism regains its position as a provider of decent jobs, stable incomes, and the protection of our cultural and natural heritage. The good news is that the WTTC recognizes and is doing its best to urge its members to take stronger and more ambitious action to address climate change. The industry needs this organization like never before. You know the sector must take real climate action, and UN Climate Change continues to offer the support you need to do that. We continue to look forward to working closely with you to charter the way to achieve climate neutrality in the travel and tourism sector by 2050, and to set clear and ambitious annual milestones for meaningful climate action and emission reduction until we achieve that target. While the 2050 target is what the science tells us that we must achieve, the journey for all of us to achieve that goal needs to start now.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are in the world in this Climate Week and very important event. I'm delighted to be able to speak to you today during the launch of the Climate Friendly Registry for 2050. We're doing this in partnership with SUNx Malta and the Thompson Okanagan Tourism Association. First of all, I would like to thank my friend Jeffrey Liebman and the SUNx organization for helping us to achieve this important goal. We value the partnership and all the efforts towards climate neutral. I want to also thank UNFCCC and in very particular my friend Patricia Espinosa, not only for her amazing support to travel and tourism, but also for her contribution and leadership in climate change. WTTC and our members care deeply about climate change and sustainability issues. A year ago, we hosted our first Global and Travel and Tourism Climate and Environment Action Forum in New York on September 24. Time flies, but WTTC back then launched our Sustainability Action Plan that will lead the travel and tourism sector towards climate neutral by 2050. Yes, that was our commitment that we announced a year ago, to be climate neutral by 2050. We at WTTC are working with our members and with international business organizations and NGOs to set this framework for decarbonization of the global and travel and tourism sector. We committed also in developing ambitious climate strategies, science-based targets, and also in reducing the impact of current activities, products, and services. Bottom line, using resources in a more effective way. We believe in collaboration, and one important milestone is to share best practices, something that perhaps we were not doing enough in the past, and since last year we have been doing much more, to share knowledge, to share best practices, and also to report on the progress made, which is crucial. We also partner with Harvard School of Public Health and Environmental Health to share knowledge and to share experience on climate initiatives and sustainability. When we worked together with SUNx, we produced the first annual Climate Friendly Travel Report last year, which was helping us to report progress to our goals. The Climate Friendly Registry that we're launching today fulfills also the need to show the commitments and track the performance. Very important, this registry has been built in close cooperation and collaboration with UNFCCC and is linked directly to the UN Climate Action Portal. We need to ensure that travel and tourism is part of the solution, and the global efforts are crucial towards climate change. WTTC, on behalf of travel and tourism private sector, is making an important and tangible contribution during this very important week, the Climate Week. Thank you very much for joining us again. We know that the sustainability agenda has been accelerated due to COVID, but we believe together can tackle COVID and also move faster towards climate change. We appreciate it. Thank you.
My name is Glenn Manzik, and I'm President and CEO of the Thompson Okanagan Tourism Association, a region on the west coast of Canada within the province of British Columbia. TOTA, our organization, together with this region, has focused a great deal on sustainable destination management. As a regional destination management organization in British Columbia, which represents and supports businesses and community tourism interests throughout the region, we have a strong commitment to sustainable growth and responsible tourism practices. We are a two-time winner of the World Responsible Tourism Award at the annual World Travel Awards, and we're a winner of the Tourism for Tomorrow Award for Destination Management by the World Travel and Tourism Council. In 2017, our region had the distinction of being officially recognized, the Biosphere Responsible Tourism Institute, as the first Biosphere certified destination in all of the Americas. We are also the first organization in Canada to join the World Tourism Organization as an international sustainable tourism observatory. Well, I'm pleased today to be part of this panel, this presentation today that talks about a new partnership, a partnership between our region and our association and SUNx. Both organizations understand the importance of building climate resilience through sustainable development and climate-friendly travel, in line with the Paris Accord and the Sustainable Development Goals. There is no greater time and no greater threat to humanity than climate change. and we are proud to partner to pioneer a new system, a system for tourism destinations and stakeholders to work together towards climate-friendly travel. What this partnership means between SUNx and TOTA is that TOTA is a charter member of the Climate Friendly Travel Registry for 2050 climate neutral and sustainability ambitions. The registry has developed in collaboration with the World Travel and Tourism Council and the Government and Republic of Malta. Registry to serve as a catalyst for transformation. And the Thompson Okanagan Tourism Association is honored to be a charter member of this climate-friendly travel registry. Climate-friendly travel is a cornerstone of sustainable tourism development and will create good jobs and help build a fairer, greener society. I am very proud today, though, to share with all of you and to formally announce the annual Morris Strong Youth Climate Friendly Travel Summit. Both TOTA and SUNx firmly believe that the climate crisis is existential and threatening to the livelihood of future generations. Morris Strong played a unique and critical role in the globalization and globalizing the environmental movement. As Secretary General of both the 1972 United Nations Conference on Human Environment and the 1992 Rio Environmental Summit, he was the first executive director of the United Nations Environmental Program. Morris was a truly great citizen of Canada and a citizen of the world, who has left behind an incredible legacy as brilliant businessman, a devoted environmentalist, and an inspirational philanthropist. We are proud to honor Morris's efforts by announcing an annual Youth Climate Friendly Travel Summit to take place virtually on April the 29th, 2021. April 29 is of note as it marks Morris's birthday. The Youth Summit will be held in partnership with the Malta Ministry of Tourism and Consumer Protection and the Mekong Tourism Coordinating Office. We look forward to having the world participate in this important event. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Jeff Lippman. I'm the president of SUNx Malta, and I want to welcome you to our Climate Friendly Travel Registry, which we've developed as part of a system to help travel and tourism companies and communities with your plans to reduce your carbon footprint. The registry is simply a tool that helps you to set your goals and to stay on track. It also links individually and collectively into the broader UN system of the Paris Climate Agreement and the Sustainable Development Goals, so we can play our part in bending our trend of carbon emissions and being sustainable and responsible. Last but not least, it will help you to prepare for the evolving regulations that all governments will slowly introduce so that countries can meet their own commitments to carbon reduction under the Paris Climate Agreement. To use the registry, you have to do just two things. First, you have to commit to climate-friendly travel. That is low carbon, SDG linked, and Paris 1.5 trajectory. And you'll find that commitment in Part A of the entry form. It's very simple to complete, and everyone has to do it. The second thing is you have to create a long-term carbon reduction and sustainable development plan, and then you have to file it on the registry by completing Part B, and that will require measurements and projection. We've produced on the registry a simulation of what the entries will look like once it's populated, and you'll be able to see a typical example of a company or a community like your own where it's shown geographically, and you'll be able to drill down until you can see the actual plan that they're following. And this is for transparency purposes. You'll be able to access good practice case studies and other helpful support material, which we will be updating on a constant basis. We'll send all registrants a downloadable climate-friendly badge that you can use on your own branding material, as well as a copy of the Earth Charter, which Maurice Strong pioneered to help us to be good planetary citizens and to make the world a better place for our grandkids. Thank you for listening. Well, there you have it. And we hope that in the coming months, all travel and tourism companies and communities will take a look at this registry and will use it as a vehicle for their own strategic planning. It's meant to be helpful. It's simple to enter into it. Once you start making the plans, it becomes, of course, more challenging, but there is not going to be a solution to the climate crisis without challenge. We now are going to go into a panel discussion with Jeff Poole and Glenn Manchik. And I'll start off by asking you, Jeff, and maybe before I do that, I just say to everybody who's listening to this broadcast, there's a box at the bottom where you can write questions for the panel, and we really hope that that you'll give us questions today. Make them as hard as you can, and we'll try and have a frank and open discussion. Whilst people are thinking of questions for the panel, Jeff, you had a session yesterday in which WTTC set out a kind of bold vision for 2050. You've restructured the organization in order to put more emphasis on this. Would you like to say a few words about how that event went and what your vision is for the future and how we can work together to use the registry to help typically not only the big members who are in WTTC, but the small members? And Glenn, I'll then ask you, because you have a lot of small travel and tourism companies in your region, how you would see this folding out going forward.
Sure, and hello everybody. Yesterday's event was the first of a series of webinars from WTTC, and this one was about accelerating the growth in sustainability. What do we do it? What are we doing, and how do we accelerate? And it's really important, I think, to understand that, as you've heard on the videos before, we've been working closely with SUNx, with UNFCCC, with various other agencies such as UNEP and so on, since the commitments that were made in New York almost exactly a year ago covering the climate, the carbon targets, being carbon neutral by 2050, and a whole range of other sustainability commitments. Now, many of those commitments are quite significant challenges for all of us, as you know, and require a lot of commitment, good processes, planning, deliverables, and with following the old adage that what isn't measured doesn't get done, really backing that up with performance. And so that's what we've been looking at developing. What's happened, of course, is that 6 to 9 months ago, we had the COVID-19 guillotine coming in very hard particularly on travel and tourism, and perhaps ironically on travel and tourism. Why were we hit so bad? Because we are such a big contributor. We're right at the front end, people traveling, spending money, economic benefits, social benefits, and so on. So we've been hit very hard. So it's been extremely difficult in the last few months for WTTC and its members to focus on sustainability and climate issues when actually we've all been fighting for survival. But it's clear to us and clear to governments that getting the recovery back to the global economy and national economies is going to be fundamentally dependent on rebuilding travel and tourism. And it is also clear that the challenges of the climate and carbon issues and other sustainability issues haven't diminished. In fact, first of all, they've accelerated, but so has awareness of it all accelerated. So it is absolutely critical that as we rebuild travel and tourism, that carbon targets, other climate change issues, and other sustainability issues are built into what we're doing. And in some senses, that may be a little bit easier than it might have been before, because the world has changed so dramatically. There is no business as usual now. So business processes are going to have to change anyway. So perhaps it's easier in some ways to build in things like sustainability practices and targets rather than trying to lay them over the top of existing processes and existing business models. Still going to be a huge challenge, but we're optimistic. And the important thing about the registry is that's the place where organizations can register what they're doing and show the progress that they're making. But importantly, as Jeffrey was saying, it's transparent. This isn't easy. Many organizations may understand what they have to do, but not understand how they can do it. And the registry will give transparency of all of the plans of others that will enable this joint learning. And I think my final comment, Jeffrey, is that that's really useful tool for the industry. It's a pragmatic thing that we've done together. And we all know that the carbon targets and climate change is not competitive. It's something where everybody needs to work together. And the registry is a transparent tool that facilitates that.
Thank you very much, Jeff. And just to amplify what you have said, yesterday, Gloria Guevara, and again today, reiterated the importance of good practice. And people will be able to go onto the registry and they'll be able to see what the good practice is that similar entities are doing, perhaps in different parts of the world. So a company or a community in Cambodia might be able to find something that's helpful from Peru. And we see the registry as a sort of open architecture system that will allow people to do this kind of thing. Glenn, you have you have thousands of small members in your organization. How do you see this initiative that we're doing together is going to be helpful to them?
Well, I mean, you guys have said it exactly right. So we have 4,000 members of our association, all small to medium-sized businesses. And, you know, I couldn't agree more about transparency and interconnectedness. We're all in this together. And what we're seeing is that because of the pandemic, it shows the interconnectedness of the tourism industry more than ever before. It really has, it has brought people's eyes from different parts of society to understand that interconnectedness, but it also has exposed our fragility. And if we are not working together as a sector, then we won't be successful. And we continue to talk about that as organizations, but it's hard to get people to work together. And this time is the time for that to happen. And because, not only because of our best practices and understanding this transparency topic that you've just talking about, so that people can learn from each other, but it also gives us the social license in the communities for which we live and work. And because we've seen that, the communities are much more concerned than ever before about tourism activity happening in their respective jurisdiction. And if we don't take steps as an industry to showcase how we are taking that leadership role, those communities will not support tourism and the activities. It's not just about the money. And that's the thing that we're seeing more than ever before. Yes, in order to be sustainable, you have to be financially sustainable first and foremost. And we're not in the philanthropic business. But there are a whole bunch of other key measures of success that need to be brought to bear. And climate and the impact that the industry has had on climate and climate change needs to take a much stronger place in our discussion. And this Climate Friendly Travel Registry is an important tool. So we are a destination that has a biosphere certified destination, which means we have businesses in our area that are also committed to the 17 goal areas of sustainability. We have over 250 businesses that have done that extra commitment with us. And we will see that those businesses will immediately be those early adopters, because this has to come from the grassroots. Ultimately, businesses need to believe that this is good for their business, but it's also good for their community and good for the globe. And if those things come together, this will be successful. And that's when we roll this out as of today. I'm imagining a strong commitment and connection with those industries, and because we have to come out of this pandemic stronger, but also better as an industry. And that's an important distinction that we need to do. This is certainly have given us pause to think about what that future can look like. And elements like this program will help us guide the way. And so we're providing that inspired navigation, but again, it's about the leadership from below, and those businesses and their uptake into this program will be critical now.
Thanks, Glenn. I think there's a dimension of this as well, which I'll try and express, and then both of you might like to comment on it. We, in our sector, we have a tendency to live in our bubble. Even in your event yesterday, Jeff, you know, there were questions about how are we going to define sustainable tourism? Well, the reality is the international community has developed a strategic plan in the Sustainable Development Goals, which are very extensive. It's about the future of everything. And on the other hand, in the Paris Climate Agreement, which is a blueprint for national governments to make their own carbon reductions and to file them in a systemic way. And I'm rather hopeful that through the discipline of the registry, and that discipline is a discipline which is entirely self-required. It's a bit like going on an exercise regime. You have to decide you want to do this. You have to decide which are the particular goals which apply to your specific business and all of the targets and the indicators. And I think by introducing this kind of discipline, which people will have to review every year to see if they're on track and adjust what they have filed, we will help to move the industry into that mainstream of international thinking of the SDGs and the Paris Agreement. Jeff, would you agree with this?
Yes, absolutely, Jeffrey. And I think that for me, that's really important, because I think things like the UN Sustainability Development Goals can be very far removed from many people's lives and many businesses in travel and tourism, particularly the 80% that are small and medium-sized enterprises. And therefore, we need to bridge this communication and understanding. And I think that's what we're doing, trying to do generally, but it's what the registry can help by giving us a mechanism and the transparency that we've been talking about. And I think it's really important as well. There was a question in the chat room that I saw just now that says, how do you make sure that this doesn't just enable greenwashing by some of the larger organizations? And I think this is actually an anti-greenwashing tool, because people will be putting their commitments on transparently, and they will have to show progress, and they will be monitored. There'll be very clear monitoring of things. So the greenwashing that perhaps has been going on in some areas will be much more difficult if everybody is collectively following this mechanism. And actually, as you say, most importantly, it's all pointing towards a purpose, which is achievement of the SDGs. And most of us don't know how to get from here to there at the moment. But we can make the steps that we're building.
Well, there's a communication challenge as well, because everybody's focused on their particular challenges, and accentuated in the past 6 months dramatically with COVID-19. There's another group of people in the UN who are developing these targets and these indicators, and somehow we have to be able to translate from our world into that world. And on another score, Glenn, you talked about the youth conference. The reality is that before COVID-19, our sector was being targeted by a very committed group of people, the Greta Thunberg generation, and they were telling us that if you continue to pollute in the way that you're polluting, particularly your aviation pollution, you won't have our generation as customers. We're going to start boycotting you. And is this the kind of thing you hope we'll be able to bring out at this conference, which we're planning to hold next year? And Jeff, which I hope we can count on WTTC to be, again, an active part of.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, and when we talk about where does this have to come from, the grassroots again, we have to look at future generations, that you know, the future leaders of the world and of our industry, to get more involved. And this youth summit will be a platform for that to happen. And what we need to do is provide a much stronger voice of the younger generation into the planning of the future of tourism and how we do business. And this is an opportunity to bring the world together, youth people, youth that want to be involved in tourism and in the planning of the future of tourism, to talk about what that could look like and give inspirational leadership for the current leaders of the industry today. So that there is an industry to talk about into the future, an industry that is more caring, more understanding of the resident and the people and the place and the culture, and that wants to contribute to and understand, again, beyond the short-term financial gain, which is important. Make no mistake, people have put food on the table. We understand as an industry and as a management association, that's critical. But there's all these other elements that we play into, because our industry is connected to so many parts of society. And the youth movement at this moment, the more engaged youth movement that we're seeing year over year over year, needs a stronger voice in our industry. And this platform, and doing it in the name of Maurice Strong, a great Canadian who has been a great inspiration, not only to this country, but around the world, indeed an honor. And so it's indeed an honor for our region to be a part of hosting such an event on a global scale with Malta and the Mekong Delta and SUNx and Jeff, you're on the line now for the WTTC, which is fabulous. I just think that it's a great platform for change to happen. And, you know, I'm actually quite surprised that it hasn't really been done before. And this is an opportunity now. Again, the pandemic brings that new opportunity to be better as an industry. And that's the hope with a youth summit like this. And so, you know, thank you, Jeffrey, for your leadership and understanding that as well, and bringing this to bear. And so, and to support the SUNx training program and that you've also developed in partnership with Malta, I think is also forward thinking, and have assembled a great battery of lecturers and from around the world on that as well. And so, you know, the SUNx movement is really getting, again, back to the grassroots. I keep talking about that. It really has to come from the bottom up, and the Youth Summit will provide that platform as well.
Well, in fact, it was really a Morris strong vision that you can't just talk about things, you have to put some institutional pieces in place that can help people. And yes, we're going to get regulation in this area, and that's a reality. But it's going to be much better, I think, and I'm sure you would agree with this, Jeff. It's from your members' perspective, if you can get in ahead of the regulation. You know, the EU has said that they're going to reduce across the EU emissions by 55% by 2030. And that will go into regulations and directives and national laws. And I think if as a sector we can be thinking about this ahead of the game, and through this mechanism, people can be developing their own ideas as to how they can deal with this, it will be a value added.
Absolutely. And I think if I could build on what Glenn was just saying, it's really important to understand that travel and tourism is actually one of the largest employers of youth in the world, and also one of the largest employers of diversity in whatever respect you wish to cover. And so, as we rebuild travel and tourism, we're going to get that message across. You know, travel and tourism provided 1 in 10 jobs in the world. Most importantly, it provided 1 in 4 of the newly created jobs. And this is directly relevant to the youth of today. So we need to do a better job going forward of explaining the importance of travel and tourism. We've done that historically based on economic benefits and contribution to GDP. We now need to focus on the social impact, the real social impact on diverse communities, on the environment. But also we've got compelling evidence now of the damage that's been done to wildlife in many parts of the world because there has been no tourism there for the last few months. So we're able to draw those direct links now. We've seen impacts on human trafficking and other issues. So in that we can build, I believe, a much more cohesive picture and communication story to the youth of today and tomorrow as to why travel and tourism is a good thing. But they're only going to listen to us if we're addressing the fundamental problem, which is our contribution to the carbon footprint. And we, again, need to be showing all of the best practices, all of the good work that is being done by hotels, tour operators, airlines, airports, to reduce carbon, to reduce food waste, to reduce the use of single-use plastics, to be responsible and sustainable. There is definitely a route forward for sustainable, climate-friendly travel. And we can do it and we can communicate it. And I think that is our challenge, is to convince the youth of today that they need to be a part of that.
Mm-hmm. And we have to listen, because what the youth are saying is, we've heard the story about all the good things that the industry is doing, and we don't buy it.
Correct.
And that's what I think Glenn and I, you know, this might rebound having this kind of a conference because you know the youth will tell us what they truly want. And again, Maurice Strong was a great believer in listening to the people who don't necessarily have the same view as you do.
Yes.
Because there's a sort of business as usual. Everybody says we can't do business as usual, but then they go on doing business as usual until they're faced with something like, I mean, to take a perfect case, all of the talk about over-tourism suddenly disappears with a bang when you get COVID. And people say, well, you know, we can't change, we can't alter our patterns, and then you have to.
Yes.
And the Build Back Better issue, I think, is okay, we are where we are now. We don't want to go back on that same, particularly that same carbon pollution trajectory. So how can we creatively find ways in which we can make major adaptation? And when the young people see us doing that, I think you'll have less of the flight shame and more long-term customers.
That's right.
I see a question here from David Gillibank, and he's asking how this initiative fits with the Climate Declares initiative. And maybe I can just respond to that. It's complementary. You know, the challenge is massive. Climate change is existential. We're on a track which we have to change. And the fact that a significant group of companies have said they intend to change through declaring that they're going to reduce their carbon in a significant way is totally complementary. And in fact, what the registry will do is it will allow them to register this in a transparent way. And again, the young people will be able to look at this and they'll be able to make their judgment based on what people reveal rather than what they say their intentions are. So I don't think there's any conflict at all in this one. In the same way as WTTC has taken a very strong leadership position on the climate issue, Jeff. Gloria Guevara has worked very closely with her old cabinet colleague, Patricia Espinosa. And I've been to several events where this has been a high priority. And this is a big change from 25 years ago when I was involved in WTTC, and it was very hard to get green issues on the agenda. And your organization has said we're going to lead on this.
And I think what's really important to understand is that WTTC is a trade association of its members. And we're doing this because we think it's a good idea, but because the member CEOs of the 200 plus organizations in WTTC really do honestly see this as a priority for all of them. When we've asked the question, this has been #1 priority for us to address. And that's why we're doing this seriously. But as you made the point, it's no good us talking to ourselves or lecturing people. We've got to go out there. And in WTTC right now, we're saying there are 3 things we need to do: inspire, educate, and inform. And that's what we've got to do to governments, to government agencies, but most importantly to the travellers and the youth who are rightly critical and suspicious about all of this. So we inspire, educate, inform has got to be what we're all doing. And we can do that through different initiatives and different processes, but all heading towards the same goal.
And you restructured the organization and brought Daryl Wade, as we saw yesterday, into a vice chairmanship position. And there are a few companies around the world that have been more committed than Intrepid Travel when it comes to the green agenda. So it's more than just nice words. You're actually doing something.
Yeah, indeed. And just so that other people are clear, we've set up, Darrell Wade has just been appointed as the Vice Chair for Sustainability within the board of WTTC. We're creating a Sustainability Committee of CEOs and a task force of second level managers to deliver and do a lot of work. So this is the first time that we've really put structure behind such an important commitment as this. And I think that's really important. It's a sea change in what we do, how we engage with our members, and how we communicate with the outside world. So this will be like dripping water on a stone for a while, but then we'll start to get some traction, I believe.
Glenn, you've won more awards than I can even see on the wall behind you. What is it in your organization that drives you to wanting to excel in this area?
Well, it's about, the pursuit of excellence. Absolutely. I mean, it is about pushing the envelope and being creative, bringing those, the discussions like we're having today, because it's about, it's about two things: being a better destination, standing out in the crowd when it comes to that, but obviously differentiating the destination from other destinations. And ultimately, though, it's about inspiring others. And we have partnerships with organizations from around the world that we work with on a regular basis, and we learn from each other. And I think that's what has made us a strong organization. We have a very dedicated team of professionals who work at TODA, a strong board who are committed to the future, who saw the idea of sustainability and responsibility as a marketing and management organization, 10, 20 years ago. And we felt that it was important that it become entrenched in our organization. And it really has inspired change in how we do business, in that sense that businesses work together as opposed to seeing each other as competitors, but actually working together around marketing and developing the destination. But also the understanding that the resident is critical to the success of the industry. And we have really taken strong strides in doing that. And I have to say, as we've moved through this critical time in the pandemic, the businesses in this region have really been able to generate wealth, some wealth, even though it's been impactful to some, without question. The industry has been able to be resilient and survive to this point. And I think that is by and large because they've been able to pivot, to understand the importance, again, of the community that they work in, and how they can support and ensure that the resident feels safe with visitors coming to the community at this time, and be still welcoming to those visitors. And I think that is because the industry took those strong steps early on. And that's what keeps us going. It keeps us going because, businesses are who inspire us every day. Because I actually just had an opportunity to sit on a panel of local businesses and young people who have taken up agritourism, and the inspiring language and their business plan and their business acumen is what, you just sit and you're like, wow, these guys, the creativity that comes from them is just extraordinary, and how they're adding value to every little apple or cherry or grape that comes from the land. It is extraordinary, and it's local, and the benefit is local as well.
Well, you also have one advantage, that you live in one of the most beautiful parts of the world.
Well, that doesn't hurt either.
So
yes,
that kind of helps you.
I know, that's true.
It's a bit more challenging if you're producing tourism in the center of a city or something. And
true enough, but
I
think it's important, Jeffrey,
that beautiful BC, or whether it is the heart of a city tourism, all of that has to transform in line with the SDGs and the Paris Accord. And this registry is designed to help all of those entities, because everybody's everybody's plan is going to be somewhat different. It relates to their circumstances, their vision, what the residents want, a whole range of things. And as I said earlier, the SDGs, you know, they have a whole range of 169 targets. So people are going to have to sit and look. And that's what we hope the registry will do. Yeah. Will it allow people, or will it help people to get into the nitty-gritty of the Sustainable Development Goals, whereas normally they would tend to put this on one side. And there is a question, we're coming to the end, but there's a couple more questions that I'd just like to reference. Herbert Hammerly has asked the question, if the reductions that are identified in the registry of about 50% less carbon emission until 2030, will the participants be asked to quantify their ambitions until 2030? The answer to that is very clear. The registry works in a very simple way. Everybody makes the declaration. And because small and medium enterprises will not have made a carbon reduction or a sustainability plan down the road till 2030 or 2050. And they get 2 years to sit in the registry and work with us and work with each other to be able to develop a plan before they have to file a plan. Whereas Jeff's members have got all that data, and probably they're already in coalitions like the Global Compact and the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. There's a whole host of big coalitions outside the sector where companies are already setting these targets. So the answer to the question is the people who move from part A to part B, they have to quantify, and they have to quantify what their plans are today, how they plan to reduce by 2030 and by 2040 and by 2050. And of course, nobody can be very specific about that, but at least it's a start, and it forces people's thinking, and it helps them align with what is happening as a government level. Every government in the world has filed a national commitment about how it will reduce its carbon, except for the United States, of course. And that means that they will be working to put those into practice. And this is a way to sort of get on track for that. So that's the answer to Herbert's question. Felix Dodds, my co-conspirator in creating SUNx, and a man who was very, very close to Maurice Strong, always asked difficult questions. And he asked, what are the panelists' views of Boris Johnson's Jet Zero climate crisis plan? What could be done? That's not what are the panelists' views of Boris Johnson, but what are the panelists' views of Boris Johnson's plan, which is a plan, he's put, I think, 350 million pounds into a fund to help develop a zero carbon aircraft by 2035, I think is the date. Jeff, do you have any comment on this?
Not specifically, Jeffrey, but I think that, again, provided all of these initiatives and the funds are pointing in the right direction, then as you said earlier, they're all complementary and helpful. You know, and in the aviation industry, for example, you know, technology is shared, moving towards carbon-free flight, sustainable fuels. That's such an important area. And if you think about travel and tourism, a big chunk is domestic, but we're critically dependent on international tourism, which means people are flying, and which is why, you know, the carbon element in the aviation industry is such an important part of what we're doing in travel and tourism overall. So I think, you know, provided that the initiatives are pointed towards the carbon targets, pointed towards the SDGs, and are well managed, then it can only, that all of these initiatives can only help. And we should encourage more, frankly.
Yes, and it's not the only one out there. I have to say this, the US, what used to be DARPA and is now called ARPA, has just put up a big chunk of money for the same thing. And I think even more significantly, Airbus have committed to producing a carbon zero, three designs for carbon zero aircraft by 2035. And I think that will make the biggest change when one of the big manufacturers moves in that direction. You'll see Boeing do something similar very soon. So I'm pretty optimistic that whilst aviation is the kind of, Harold Goodwin calls it the Achilles heel of the sector, it will, in this time frame of 2030 and 2050, it will be able to find alternative fuel mechanisms or propulsion mechanisms that will, all of the Airbus ones are based on hydrogen. They're all a different kind of propulsion. And I think, and we have to do it, you know, the Greta Thunberg position is right. If you are going to be polluting when the world needs to reduce its carbon, you won't get a license to operate.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had a fairly good discussion. I want to bring this to a close. We're slightly over time. I want to thank all of the people who've been listening. I want to thank our friends Gloria and Patricia Espinosa, Minister Ferrugia Portelli for their messages, and Glenn and Jeff for you participating and for really being strong partners in this initiative. We look forward to in WTCC, Jeff, in SUNx Malta, we're a very small group of people, and behind the scenes somewhere is Ollie Wheatcroft, and without Ollie it wouldn't work at all. But we're committed to this, and we're committed to working with you and to try to help the industry move in what is clearly the right direction. So thank you for participating, everybody, and Jeff and Glenn, thank you for sharing this platform.
Thank you very much. Take care.